The new Brendan Fraser movie, Pressure, is the latest Hollywood attempt at telling a fresh story about one specific battle in World War II that has been explored numerous times. D-Day was also called Operation Overlord, and it happened on June 6, 1944, with the largest amphibious invasion in history, with 156,000 Allied troops landing across Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, and Sword beaches. Most of the movies depicting D-Day tell the story of the battles on the beaches, all the lives lost, and the eventual victory for the Allied forces that helped turn the tide of World War II. However, there are many other movies that look at different aspects of the war. D-Day has been approached through the lens of romance, satire, and even supernatural horror, and the critical reaction has been just as strong. Pressure continues the attempt to look at the war differently, showing what went on behind the scenes. Pressure looks at the revelation that the attack had to be delayed one day because of weather conditions, but it took one man an enormous amount of persuasion to convince the Allied forces to delay the attack. With battles on the beaches and fights in the war rooms, as well as love stories and even an attack by monsters in one of the more horrific D-Day movies ever told, there are a lot of options for people wanting to see movies about this important single battle in World War II. 10. The Big Red One, 1980. The Big Red One was a D-Day war movie from 1980 that was written and directed by Samuel Fuller, based on his time in the United States Army's 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, which was nicknamed the Big Red One. Lee Marvin stars in the lead role as an unnamed sergeant, while the rest of the cast includes a few familiar faces, including Mark Hamill and Robert Carradine. The plot follows the squad through the entire European war, from North Africa and Sicily to Omaha Beach on D-Day. The Omaha sequence is just one part in what is technically a war diary. The original version clocked in at 113 minutes, but Fuller's full version was 162 minutes and premiered at the 2004 Cannes Film Festival. Roger Ebert praised the original movie, but gave the extended cut a perfect score. 9. Ike, Countdown to D-Day, 2004. Brendan Fraser isn't the first person to play General Dwight Eisenhower in a movie about D-Day, as Tom Selleck played him in 2004's Ike, Countdown to D-Day. This was a made-for-television historical war drama originally aired on A&E, directed by Robert Harmon. The movie dramatizes the 90 days leading up to Operation Overlord and Eisenhower's role as Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force. This movie focuses on command-level decision-making, which is similar to Pressure, but without the consideration of the weather conditions. It is more about when the attack would take place and how the Allied forces would storm the beaches. Ike, Countdown to D-Day earned multiple Primetime Emmy nominations, including Outstanding Made-for-Television Movie, Outstanding Directing, Outstanding Art Direction, and Outstanding Single-Camera Picture Editing. 8. Storming Juneau, 2010. Storming Juneau is a 2010 movie that is a Canadian docudrama by director Tim Woolikadiuk that follows the Canadian assault on Juneau Beach on June 6, 1944, blending dramatic reenactment with veteran interviews. The story follows three real soldiers. Paratrooper Corporal Dan Hartigan was dropped behind enemy lines the night before. Lieutenant Bill Grayson of the Regina Rifles fought on the beach. Sergeant Leo Garipi was the commander of the only one of 19 tanks to complete its mission. This movie debuted on the History Channel in the United States, and it also included an interactive online D-Day archive that had interviews with more than 30 veterans. This is an important release that reminds people of Canada's overlooked contribution to D-Day. 7. D-Day, the 6th of June, 1956. In 1956, D-Day the 6th of June hit theaters, directed by Henry Koster, based on Lionel Shapiro's 1955 novel The 6th of June. Robert Taylor stars as Captain Brad Parker, a desk-bound American, Richard Todd stars as Lieutenant Colonel John Winter, a British commando, and himself a real Normandy paratrooper veteran, and Dana Winter stars as Valerie Russell, the third part of the love triangle in this wartime romance. The movie follows Parker and Winter on their way to Normandy, and the movie flashes back to their relationship with the same woman. The plot is all about romance, and the relationship between the two men, and the D-Day combat itself only happens in the final 10 minutes of the movie. The film has an IMDb score of 5.9, and D-Day is just the final destination of the story. 6. The Americanization of Emily, 1964. The Americanization of Emily is another wartime romance, this one released in 1964 by director Arthur Hiller, with a screenplay by Paddy Chayefsky. This is a black-and-white dark comedy anti-war film that stars Garner as Lieutenant Commander, Charles Madison and Julie Andrews as Emily Barham, a British war widow. The dark comedy comes from an unstable Admiral Jessup, Melvin Douglas, who wants to create a publicity stunt to make sure the first dead man on Omaha Beach is a sailor. Both Madison and Commander Bus Cummings, James Coburn, are sent as a film crew to Omaha Beach for the D-Day attack. Madison ends up as the first American casualty as a result. The Americanization of Emily was nominated for 2 Oscars, one for Best Art Direction, Black and White, and the second for Best Cinematography, Black and White. It was controversial in 1964 for its biting anti-war satire and willingness to mock military heroism, but it remains a fantastic film in the genre. 5. Overlord, 2018. Overlord is not a war movie. Instead, this is a supernatural horror movie that takes place during the events of D-Day. Directed by Julius Avery, Overlord is an alternate history action horror that starts the night before D-Day, which is named after the historical Operation Overlord, the code name for the Normandy landings. On the night before D-Day, a squad of American paratroopers is dropped behind enemy lines in Nazi-occupied France to destroy a radio tower atop a church. They discover an underground Nazi lab conducting horrific experiments, creating undead soldiers. While this is a monster movie set on D-Day, it was also a huge surprise, and it ended up with an 80% Rotten Tomatoes score, with critics calling it a fun movie for B-movie fans. 436 Hours, 1965. 36 Hours is a war thriller written and directed by George Seaton, based on the Roald Dahl 1944 story Beware of the Dog.